All right, Mark.
Which depends on what you want to call the city.
We're good.
Hey, welcome to our now 6th or 7th community conversation. Seventh community conversation back, and this is the first time we've done it live outside on Main Street. Thanks to those who did come here tonight on Main Street, glorious Main Street in Vincennes. Tim and I have a guest with us. We brought Kathy Lane, and Kathy is running for city clerk. Kathy, would you introduce yourself and just tell them some of your qualifications and what you do?
Sure. My name's Kathy Lane, and I am running for City Clerk Treasurer for the City of Vincennes. I have a lot of experience in banking, 10 years in banking. I worked in the assessor's office for 8 years, so I'm very familiar with county budgets, although city's a little bit different, but so I do have experience with finances, budgets as it relates. I kind of understand the tax system as it works. As best as you can understand that tax system, that is. But I'd really like to bring my experience I have kind of to the city and kind of just help what's already going on. There's lots of great things happening in the city, and I just want to be a part of that. I'd like to take the experience I have and kind of help everybody. And you know, if I can do something and bring something to the table, I'd like to be able to do that.
Kathy's not only worked in city or county government and financial institutions, but you've owned a small business for a lot of years too.
I have. 20 years I've owned a rental company and many other investments. So
yeah, there you go. Tim, what's going on today?
A lot of fun-filled stuff. We had a busy city council meeting last night. If you didn't know about it, Mark. I mean, fantastic. I hear a laugh from the crowd because it sounds like somebody was there. It's just one of those things that I always find odd. We've talked about numerous times that it's odd for a city to have nothing on the new business or old business, especially a city our size. I mean, you would think something would be going on.
What's the overall budget of the city of Vincennes?
We're looking at in the $15 million range.
So a $15 million corporation, all the business can be handled in
7 minutes.
7 minutes.
7-minute meeting last night.
That's ridiculous.
And not a lot of that information very public. So why is that, I guess, is the question as you're a city councilman member at this time?
And that's one of the things that Councilman Grove and I kind of talked about last night. We kind of get in these situations where there's just really no discussion over things. Whether that's, you know, people not wanting to discuss it with certain people, or just an uncomfortableness that people have talking in public, or they're just kept out of the loop. So that's one of the things that you and I have really hit on, and I know that we've kind of emphasized it's really important is we've got to really be open about what happens. We've got to talk about these things that happen in the city. We've got to be willing to communicate, even when it does get a little awkward, because at times it will get awkward. Like, I mean, maybe you don't have an answer to something. That's not bad. And that means you just need to do a little homework. Is that correct?
That's correct.
I mean, so this thing about being open, being transparent, and being more willing to communicate, that's something that we've started from when we first started these community conversations. That's why we started these community conversations, is we want to be open to the public. And we feel that these conversations amongst people that have different ideas, different perspectives, allow us to make better decisions. So that's something that's got to completely change. And I think we've talked about it before. You've got to have a discussion-focused council, a question-focused council, where we go in there and it's not about what's on the agenda, it's about what questions are being asked about what's on the agenda, or what's on a previous agenda, or what's happening in the city. Discussions that are happening about what's on the agenda, what was on the previous agenda, what's in the future, those kind of things. And I know that's a big thing that I want to emphasize, and I know that's something you want to emphasize as well.
Openness and transparency is of the utmost importance to not only myself, but it is to the general public. The people that live here, that live, work, play, need to know what's going on in our city government and need to be involved. And the best way to do that is, we've talked a number of different times, we could bring meetings to everybody. Just like we are right now on Main Street, we could certainly bring meetings to portions of Main Street, maybe the Pavilion, maybe to Greg Park, maybe to Kimball Park. Wherever people are is where the city council needs to be. And those meetings, those claims that were done last night, they need to be read out and explain what the claims are, where that money's going, who that money's going to, and why. It's public money. There's no shame in that at all. I know sometimes you can tell when somebody's been on council for a long time, the quickness of just not being really into it, when you don't really get involved anymore, you can see that evidence by just passing, just checking it off and moving on. So I think we've talked till we're blue in the face about openness and transparency and doing those things with city government. I want to see the budget. I know we're in the middle of the budget process right now, and that would be something the clerk's office is involved in heavily. So of course, right now, not as involved at the city council as I think it should be, and I'm not blaming you or Councilman Grove, I just think that there's been some of those powers have kind of been taken away over time, and the council itself needs to be more involved in the budget process. Go ahead. You have some thoughts on this?
Yeah, it was kind of a weird budget process this year, and if you guys have read the newspaper, any of the news stories, or got to hear us talk about it, when I started on council, we had committee hearings on the budget, we had individual meetings on the budget, then we had 2 days of budget hearings, and hours and hours and hours upon budget hearings.
$15 million worth.
I mean, so you had a lot of time to go over these things and kind of pinpoint what was necessity, what was the need, what we needed to focus on, and what was important. It was 2 hours this year. Now, a lot of things have changed too, and kind of streamlined everything. So what we need to realize is we kind of know what the state's going to give us because of the tax caps and things like that. We have really strong department heads that can go through these things pretty quickly. But the things that I really kind of like to ask during these meetings is, all right, are there areas that we really need to focus on? What's a need that you have? What's something that you see coming up in the future that we might not be paying attention to? Because I mean, I'm not an expert in that area. We were able to talk to Assistant Chief Johnson on the police department. He talked about body cams, and the company that we're going with right now, there's an issue with one of the connecting cords, and this is not an issue that's just happening here, but everybody that's bought this body cam, just wear and tear. It's a small little cord connected on there, and it eventually kind of tears, and then the camera doesn't work, and you can't really fix it. So in that sense, we need to start preparing to get better body cams for our police officers. So that's something he said, that's something you need to kind of prepare yourself for, because on the horizon, I mean, those things aren't cheap. And so it's something that you need to make sure that you have budgeted for. But those are things that I like to, you get to really talk one-on-one with your department heads and figure out what's going on, what's the need of the department. You can also look at the budgets and see, all right, I haven't spent anything in this side, or I've left this budget item open.
We are on Main Street, and it's a vibrant Main Street, so we will have some traffic.
So the thing that we have to remember is well, why isn't that line item, why hasn't it been spent? Now, there might be waiting to the end of the year to spend it. We also have to remember the way the budget has changed. We wanted to take things out of the rainy day fund and kind of pad your general fund, because if you've got too much in your rainy day fund, the state will say, hey, you've got enough in your rainy day fund, I'm not going to give you what you asked for. So you've got to be very careful in what you put in there. So those are things, that's a time where you can kind of sit and have these really kind of personal conversations that you need to have and that you might not get on a day-to-day basis. And those are extremely important, and we need to have more of those. That doesn't need to happen just once a year. Those are things that need to happen monthly or bi-monthly, where we're sitting down and talking with these department heads. We're talking with the workers of the city.
The council is the fiscal body of the city of Vincennes. It's a legislative body, but it's the fiscal body, so we need to take care of our finances along the way. And that's one of the main focuses of the council. And right now, I don't feel like that's as represented as needed at this time. It's just not one of those things. And I'm going to use a silly example, but it's not silly. And we talked about this the other day at the Festival Latino. In a few years, we're going to have the eclipse. And it's going to go right over the city of Vincennes. Actually, it goes right down Memorial, right over the Memorial, right down the Riverwalk, and right through Wabash Trails. Hopkinsville, Kentucky, just a few years ago, they had 300,000 people descend on that city for the eclipse. If we had 100,000 show up 6 months from now, are we prepared? Do we have the police barricades in order? Do we have money set aside for restrooms? Do we have a traffic control plan? Do we have places for these people to come? That's if 100,000. What about 200,000?
Now,
What about 300,000?
And some of the estimates, like those were just because they were so overwhelmed. It was probably close to 500,000 people that descended on this community. And the thing is, well, they're just predicting that's going to go through. Predictions for the eclipse are pretty spot on. So it's going to come right through the center of Vincennes.
2020,
I mean, right here,
20.
coming through here.
2024.
Yeah, I'm on that committee.
Mark's on that committee.
So, but right now, that's one of those things that the budget should be setting some money aside for. Just kind of banking it over there and realizing that this is going to cost the city of Vincennes some money. It's going to be great for our economy. Don't get me wrong. We're going to do some business out of this. Hotels will be busy. Our hotels, the last time the eclipse happened in Kentucky, were sold out here. They drove 4 hours away to be in the center of the eclipse there. So hotels 4 hours away, sold out. And it goes right through our city. We're the only city within a 200-mile range that it actually goes through. The other one in Indiana is Franklin, and it touches the corner of the city of Franklin, not through the center of it, not where our national park is. We are going to be inundated with people, and we need to set aside budget. So not only do we need to plan for now and what's necessary now, but we also need to be looking to the future with our budget too. And that's one of those things that I think that you bring, I bring, I think Kathy will bring to the budget process too at the clerk's office. The clerk, you have to work with the clerk because they're the ones who keep a nice eye on that. They are basically the HR department for the city of
The
Vincennes.
chief financial officer.
The chief financial officer of the city
I
of
mean,
Vincennes.
I think it's the city clerk treasurer's job to kind of keep the council and the mayor attuned to what's going on with the city so that they understand the financial, it's a money thing, making sure the money's there and helping the mayor and the city council make predictions, making sure we're properly lined up so that we have all these ducks in a row is very important. It's important that really you look at these budgets and you can predict these things. You got to be able to predict your income, predict where your money's going to go. It's important.
Yes, sir.
How much of the $15 million, where does that money come from? You mentioned the state allocates. So how much of that $15 million comes from the state level? How much is driven from local taxes?
You've got your local taxes, you've got your general fund from the state. We're a river city, so we get funds for riverboat money as well. We've got all these different funds and all these different taxing entities that come in there. I don't want to get too in the weeds with this, but when we go through, like for budget process, what we do is you'll have, here's this fund, this is how much we've got this year, this is what we're projecting for next year. Here's what we got in this fund, here's what we have, here's what's projected for next year. Here's this fund, here's what's projected for next year. So you can kind of have a rough estimate of what you're going with as you go forward. Now, there's some things that do affect that. Obviously, when you talk about like property taxes, depending on what's going on, not just in the state economy, but the national economy, the world economy, there could be things that happen with those kind of things. So we're pretty good at guessing those, and it is. I mean, it's educated guesses when you go forward. We've worked really well with a couple financial companies. I think right now it's Reedy Financial that's been working, not just with the city, but with the RDC, which you're heavily involved with. They give us pretty strong projections. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, they come every couple months and kind of give us an updated projection, just in case something has changed.
So to go on to that, what Kathy's knowledge when it comes to the assessed valuation of our community, how that plays into our overall tax money too. And being the assessor for 8 years, she has an understanding of that along the way as well. The assessed valuation of our community, where's it trending? Do you know at this particular time, where was it at when you left and where's it going now?
Well, it was going up 2% a year when I was there. But it's difficult because the tax caps so strangle the city of Vincennes like you can't believe. And they're only going to get worse. As legislation continues to eat away at what we could get at it, we have to make better use of the money we do get. Because we're not going to keep getting more and more and more until we can grow somehow. We've got to encourage people to invest here. There is so much going on. I've always felt like Vincennes is so on the cusp of being great. We are so right there. We just need to kind of do a few more things to kind of keep us great. We are so there that we have so much to offer people around here. I'm so surprised. Like we said, people say there's nothing to do here. You are not paying attention if you say there's nothing to do.
not enough volunteers, but there's a lot to do. There's a lot to do.
Yes.
So Kathy hit on something that's very important to me, and that's growing our population. Our population currently, as of July 2018, I looked today on the census predictions, 17,171 people. That is a down almost 6% since 2010. That's a huge number. We need to build within the city. We need to bring back the population within the city. And part of that reasoning is invest in the city is housing, creating some better housing within the community. I think the council can play a part in that. Also is providing the amenities, which I think the council has done some of those things. I know you've led the park charge quite a bit, and you know the city itself voted to increase the pool, to do the pool, put a tax on themselves so they would have a nice pool, and the city of Vincennes did that. And then also the schools, reinvesting in the neighborhood schools, I think was essential to ensuring that we could build the neighborhoods around the school. So if the school picks up, consolidates, and moves out somewhere else, those neighborhoods tend to fall down. By reinvesting in those schools, it does give at least us the chance at the redevelopment commission, at the city council, to invest in those neighborhoods and build them back up in some way. That's at least the hope, you know, and those are the direction that I think that we need to move and continue to forcefully move in that way.
And usually when Mark hits that point about our population decline, I always like to hit it with the point that we're trending in the opposite direction. We're going up when you look at numbers of students. Talk with South Knox, talk with North Knox, talk with the Vincennes schools, and what you see is we have large young populations now that we're going to have to figure out what to do, where to place all these kids.
So in the city of Vincennes, 17,171 according to the U.S. Census. About 19% of those are under the age of 18, which actually is above par for the United States. If you go into the United States, it's about 8. So 19 in the city of Vincennes. It's about 18 for the United States itself. So we do have a younger population, under 18, that we can make sure that the school is moving forward. Yeah, I can get really weird on the census stuff because I believe it's so important to not only the investment that you see in our community, but how other communities perceive us. It's important to our tax dollars. It's important to how people go to church, invest, volunteers, all those kind of things.
And it's not just when you talk about like what do we do as a city to invest, but for me it's a big thing of what do we do to create an environment that people want to be a part of? What do we do to create that environment that people want to invest in? What's that thing that we need to do that people say, I want to live there. I want to invest my dollars there. I want to build my business there.
Not only those amenities, but an openness at government too.
Right. And a lot of things that we can do on the citywide, so people are like, well, why don't you build this? Well, we don't build that. We don't build those businesses. What we do is we can help a business out. What do you need us to do? What can we do to help you out? We need to be able to help you instead of you coming to us being, well, this is what you need to do by our decree. That doesn't work. Who wants to be a part of that? We want to be a council that goes to you and says,
Properties that become less than desirable in a neighborhood. Have there ever been are there grants, or there been any talk about tax abatements and things for property owners who have rentals near the university or in the core of the city to try and improve those properties that have become, you know, I don't want to use the word eyesore, but
Rough.
could you
Rough.
could use some
That's a
paint,
good word.
could use some landscaping,
You could use some tender loving care.
you know, that whole, you know, one broken window, you know, destroys a neighborhood eventually. And we've got a lot of neighborhoods with that one broken window. And I'm not sure what you could do to fix that.
It is a complicated issue, and I think there are some. And I've said this about, and I said this not too long ago about when the university came and tore down some homes over there. We didn't give them a reason not to. You know, we didn't invest in the sidewalks. We didn't invest in the streets. We didn't invest in the alleys. But we also didn't. There wasn't enough carrots and more stick when it came to punishment. I think. You know, you didn't do this. We're going to cite you instead of some figure out, and that's a group of people that get together and figure this out, how to incentivize making your property better. I mean, maybe it is a small little grant, maybe it is some landscaping, maybe it is better lighting, maybe it's all those things. But right now, we're not doing any of it. we're not sitting down and having that discussion.
And a thing that we gotta kind of think of too is we
Tax
gotta
abatement.
we gotta throw everything on the table, and instead we're kind of just sitting back. And this is not a problem that Vincennes is just facing. Like we're talking all across the U.S. You're seeing towns about our size that are dealing with these properties that are right on the cusp or right on the borderline. And what do you do with this? How do we get people to invest more in those properties and, like you kind of use the word, show more pride in the community and things like that? So what do we do? And
They have taken some houses down.
yes, yeah, we've been lucky enough that the state had a blight program that we took full advantage of.
So we want to see infill, what's called infill, back in those spots to reclaim that tax base for the city of Vincennes. But so if you spread that tax base out, in theory, it's a long-term theory, but in theory, overall taxes with everybody else would go down if you could spread that tax base out amongst those. And so that's why housing is such an important part of this, and cleaning some of that stuff up along the way.
And there's-
yes, sir.
I was at the budget hearing meeting and I didn't hear it was talking about the sidewalk program where landowners can do that. Is that still, is there money?
There's money allocated to the program, but we've got a list that goes into 2020. So we've got the sidewalk program. It's one of our most popular programs, but we've got people on the list till 2020. And if you're doing math at home, it's 2019 right now. So
So is that constantly, is that happening weekly?
There's not enough money in that budget. Let's just be honest.
That's, okay, that's what I'm asking. Is there money in the budget or?
is there money in the budget? Yeah, you have to move some things around to be able to do that. To kind of hit back on Dennis's point, what do we need to do to kind of improve some of these properties around town? I know Councilman Grove and I have kind of hit, and I kind of shared the idea with Mark, is one of the areas that you see a lot of those is kind of the historic district. But a lot of things that kind of slows things up is that some of those improvements on a historic house are expensive. Mark, you live in an old house. I'm not saying it's a bad house, it's an old house, right? And those things cost-
1908.
those things cost a little bit of money. So like when you're trying to improve those things, and the cost goes through the roof, so you see some people like, I can't afford that. So we talked about, well, what happens if we kind of set money aside for the historic district? And people could apply for a grant like they do in the urban enterprise zone, or they do in any other kind of zone. But this is specifically for the historic area. So you'd have to meet certain criteria. You'd have to set up the things just like you would for urban enterprise, but you'd put it on a spin for your historic district. Now, instead of them paying the full amount, they're paying just a regular amount, and they can make those improvements. So you set a little bit of money aside, build that fund, and then people come to you and ask for grants to be able to rebuild those areas. You could set something up similar, that was something that we rarely used, similar to like a revolving loan fund, where we could possibly set money aside, and then people could come to us for loans to whether they would be at no interest rate or an extremely low interest rate to be able to rebuild their properties. So you could set things up to be able to do that, but like we haven't even talked these things through.
So, coming from a banking background now, let's talk about that a little bit too. That idea of a revolving loan fund for residents is a great idea, because if you start looking at the home values within the historic district, there may not be, how people do this is either they pay it out of pocket or they go get a home equity loan. Well, there's not a lot of equity in some of those homes. So the city, a bank won't take that risk. They just won't without the equity in that home. So having the city do a similar program where they wouldn't need to have that risk. I mean, their idea is to bet on the long haul. You know, we've been here 280 plus years as the city of Vincennes, so I hope we're here for another 280 more. The idea is you improve those homes and that tax base stays around for a long time. And so what happens if they can't put a roof on their house, if they can't do the air conditioning, or if it just becomes too cumbersome at some point, they leave, the house values drop. So it becomes this ever degrading scale of assessed valuation within the historic district or within other districts. So that's my, sorry, kind of went off the deep end there.
That's fine. I like your banking background.
Yeah, that's nice.
Yes.
Within the past couple of years, City Council has done a great job collaborating with county and other departments as well to increase population and to do all these great things we've been talking about. Is there any collaboration that you think needs needs to happen to that isn't currently happening?
You want me to go with this one?
Sure, yeah.
I think
I mean,
we've done a lot better job. I mean, compared from when I started, we didn't even talk to the county. Like it was you're your own entity. We're over here in the city. This is our area. County. This is over there. I mean, I didn't think Kathy was in county government. I didn't even talk to her at all. Not that I didn't like you, Kathy. It's just that you had your own. Hey, here's my playground here. I'm going to stay inside my box, and that's it. But the thing is, we got to get through that mindset, because if we do well at the city of Vincennes, the county's going to do well. If the county does well, then the city of Vincennes is going to do well. If we can entice people to come here, that's going to help the county. If the county can entice people to come here, that's going to help the city. I mean, we're connected, whether you like it or not. So we have to get past those things. Have we communicated better? 100 times better. We started looking at projects together. We started looking at regional development instead of just certain areas, and how we can benefit certain things. So yeah, we started that process. Do we need to start working on that more? Maybe look at how we can benefit, through our departments, maybe help their departments, or their departments help our departments, or what we can do as a city to benefit them, and what they can do as a county to benefit us. Because in the end, we want to build up Southern Indiana, specifically our little piece of the pie, to be something special, to be something great. I mean, I know a lot of us, I used to work in the county, and there's a lot of people who work in the county that work in the city. I mean, the lines don't stop us from just going into the area. So we've got to figure out a way to be open and communicate. Maybe that's more of possibly we talked about bringing the council to the people, and we go meet in different places, we go meet in different areas. Well, maybe we need to start meeting together. It doesn't have to be a meeting where it's, sit down professional. It's, hey, we're going to spitball ideas. How can we help here? This is going to help us. Does this help you? Or if we do this, change it a little bit, does that help you a little bit more?
And see, those meetings, I believe, could be done at the library, could be done at City Hall, could be done at Vincennes University, could be done anywhere, but they need to be open to the public. They need to have the media there. They need to have all those things. So when things are said, everybody is able to be there. There's stuff that doesn't need to happen behind the scenes. It needs to be out in front of everybody. I think about where collaboration can happen the best within the city and county is certainly infrastructure projects. And I say that because there is a definitive line. There's the city line, and then the county starts. A lot of those are along roads. Main Street's one of those. You will see Hillcrest Road. There's a portion of that. It's really 2nd Street behind Lowe's. That's actually, the city owns the road, but just across the street is county. And I see a lot of people traveling there. As we improve those roads, there needs to be a better communication with the county on how to do that and when to do that. One of the things that the county actually regulates within the city of Vincennes when it comes to roads, bridges. The county is in charge of all bridges within a county. So where we at the RDC have worked with them is on the Main Street project currently. There's a bridge that goes over what's Mantle Ditch. It dumps into Lenahan Cone or Alton's Pond at this point. But the county had to be on board with that, because in the end, the bridge tax goes to help repair that bridge over time. The city's paying for it, but then we had to do it to a county spec, city spec, and then also the state had to sign off on it as well. There's a lot of collaboration that needs to take place. There's something that's happening now, but more and more, as those lines I see blurred, not just because of need, but because of want. I think the county, I've talked to a number of people that are on county council, they want those lines blurred a little bit more too. And I think that once maybe this election cycle's over, maybe you'll see a little more of that blending and a little more collaborative efforts.
While we're talking about lines, certainly the university and a hospital have taken some properties off the tax base. I know here a few years ago there was talk about, enlarging, the city of Vincennes to take in some housing areas that really, the people are working at the hospital and the university, but living in the county. Is there there was some kind of a problem where that was kind of a timed thing? Is there been any other further talk about
you
moving?
Go ahead and say the word annexation.
Okay, annexation.
Yeah.
Everybody's scared of that word.
No.
It's a hot button.
When we talked about annexation, the way that it was done the last time, there was a time limit because the annexation rules changed. So the way that it was being done at that time, we had to do it a certain way, and the way that we did it, it was you couldn't do it after that year was over. and we were getting close to the year. I think Councilman Grove was close. You weren't on there. Were you just elected or right before you got elected?
Right before I got elected.
All right, so it was like right before an election cycle, and then at the end of that year, then that process ended and you had to do something new. And if I'm correct, you have to have a certain percentage of people approach the city now. So now, if an area wants to be annexed, it has to come to the city, and then the city starts the process that we do. And that process, it's a couple month process. And I remember when we started it, I was like, man, this is pretty intense, and it got more intense as we went along.
I think
And
the word forced annexation was
more,
stressed out versus
more
annexation,
intense, and the
voluntary
more research you did on it, you kind of saw this process, because we were trying. It was going up the way that it was presented. It was going up against a timeline where it didn't really go over too well, if we all remember.
Dennis, I think of annexation in terms of where city services would be needed the most. And I've talked to a few people that live in the Fox Ridge area. Right now, they're struggling with septic systems.
They always have been.
Always
Yeah,
have
they
been.
always have.
Those homes are now in that 25 to 30 year range. Those systems are being upgraded or they're failing completely. And we have put in and installed a pump station that takes in some of the Fox Ridge area. I think that is one of those areas that may, I mean, if those individuals came into the city and asked, I think there is some need
I would
from
think
them.
the property values would go up.
It does.
It certainly
It goes
offset
up.
any.
When a septic system can be anywhere from $8,000 to $25,000, it really holds down your resale value. So, and just the functionality of the whole neighborhood. So I think of need in some of those areas more than I do even like this forced annexation, or as I think that it was probably put by some of the detractors of it was this money grab, trying to build in more tax base by that. I think that services have to be at the forefront of that to really do any.
Do you know what percentage of, say, in the last, I don't want to go back too far, in the last, say, 5 years, a percentage of the tax base that's actually been removed by BU or the hospital? I mean, is
You know,
it
that's
substantial, or I mean, is it?
No. And it's not because, like Mark said, the properties that they're taking are properties that are lower assessed values. So if you take 10 houses at $20,000 apiece, that's not that much in the grand scheme of things. Sure, that's tax dollars, and that's going to be spread out over everybody else. But it is significant, and it's kind of just deteriorating to the city in general. It just kind of takes away the street view. Some need to go, but some have value and need to stay. And the one thing I would say on the annexation thing, because I know better than anybody else, people think when they see the city of Vincennes tax rate, they don't want that tax rate. But we are hitting the tax caps. Most people would not see a tremendous increase in their tax bill because we're already hitting the tax caps. If you own a property and you own less than 1 acre and you live in that house, whether you live in Fox Ridge or you had right here in the city of Vincennes, you would have the same exact tax rate.
That's the
The
first time
only
I've ever heard
difference,
that.
the only difference you would have is that you would have to pay the city pool tax, which, okay, on $100,000, that's $20.
$20.
That's
That's
$20.
it.
And you might have to pay the rain tax. Okay, there's another $20. In the grand scheme of things,
Is the sewer worth that?
it is not. It is
Yeah.
not a substantial amount of money. And if you really had a question about it, I can look at your property record card and tell you exactly what it would affect your taxes. It is not that big a
Good
deal.
answer. Answers.
That's a solid answer.
Good
If
answer.
that's something we need
That's
to
a-
heard a
best
long
answer
time
I've
ago,
heard
I think.
in years.
Yeah.
Because that was the thing too. Because like when you kind of trade those off, and then your water and sewage rates were lower, and trash, you could have been
True.
there for cheaper trash. I go like, wow, all right, like it's stuff. It's a wash.
Once again, I'm for volunteer annexation.
No, and
I'm not
no,
forcing
and
it.
this is just one
But
of
I
those
think
talks.
there are places that would volunteer to come into the city, and it would help the city, but it would also help them.
And that's one of the
Right.
things too, like when that's brought up, like one of the key things when you look at the way the state tells you this process should happen is to straighten up boundaries that might be awkward within a city or areas that need services provided. It's never just a straight.
North is not north.
I was about to say.
It's never just like say, hey, you need money, this is what you need to do.
But are you saying that for annexation, the best route is an uprising with
I wouldn't really say uprising. I would say that concerned
Well,
citizens in an area that, hey, we feel like
a
this is the
concern.
best
We have a concern.
mode for our future of our neighborhood or future for our block, and we need to do this. I think the best route for you to do is to do that, because that's the way you go. Because the biggest mistake about that was all of a sudden it was one day I wake up and in the mail there's a packet of annexation stuff that everybody has gotten, and now you need to figure this thing out. Nobody had really had it explained to them, and at that point, because of the lack of communication, everybody's on the defensive because nothing was really explained. I mean, that's a really good example of why we need to be more open in our communication, why we need to be willing to be like, hey, I might not have an answer for you, but I can get it. I know who to ask. I'm just, here's an idea that I have. I need your feedback on it, instead of, we're going to do this, try to figure this out on your own. That obviously didn't work. And it
Caused some hard feelings.
there was numerous meetings that there was a lot of aggravated people, and that shouldn't have been the case. It should have been more of a discussion.
On that annexation part, it clearly didn't work the way it was done or presented last time. Going forward, it will have to be volunteers from those neighborhoods coming in. But as a city, I think that the way we can improve our own tax base, therefore help our fire department, help our police department, help the streets and sidewalks, is we have to invest in ourselves, like what the RDC is doing on the old Kmart property, and we've had some good announcements come out of there. That tax base, because of the way that old line is, that money actually goes to our fire department. That will help our fire department along the way, maybe alleviate some of that overall budget shortfall that they've experienced over the last few years. So more ways of figuring out how to build the tax base within. And then, if we make ourselves solid, people want to be a part of us too. Hoover flies. They want to be a part of us. And I think that's the best way, is you improve yourself, people want to be a part of it. And that's where we're at. Got anything else?
I mean, that's the whole environment thing that we've talked about. Like, what are we doing? What are we doing to make people say, I want to be a part of this? There's something special that's happening. And Kathy said it earlier, we're right on the cusp. Like, I know when I go on the radio and I talk with Ed, that one of the things I'm like, we're right there. It's almost the golden age. And we see a lot of things coming. One of the things that
There's
is
a
really,
mosquito biting your forehead.
I know. One of the things that I'm really excited about.
Settle down, Mom.
Is it picking up and carrying on?
One of the things
Mom, move.
that I'm excited about is
Get it.
soon the grain
I'll get
bin's
it.
going to be torn down, and that's going to be in October. And what we see is, everybody sees that Riverloft project's going to go up. That's awesome. It's going to be beautiful. But everybody forgets about the 22 individual housing units that are going to be built all over town. And people completely forget about that. That's a game changer for us, because right now, we have a shortage of housing. That's why some of the housing prices here in Vincennes are higher than areas that are around us, because there's not enough housing for people in Vincennes. That's why you see people moving out in the county and not into the city, because there's not housing here.
Or Washington.
Yeah, and I know the RDC, the RDC is even looking into this, like, what do we do to develop areas to build housing? So this isn't a problem that is just with developers or just with the city or just with the RDC. I mean, to get people here, we've got to have housing. We've got to have places for people to live. Because I think we have a lot of exciting stuff to offer. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on in here, and there's not a weekend where we don't have some kind of activity going on or some event. The question is now, we got you here. We got you hooked. Now we got to get you living here. So we've got to think differently about doing things there. So what are we going to do as a city? Well, how are we going to be able to use these certain groups, specifically the RDC, kind of spearheading this right now? So we've got to be better at that.
So we've kind of come to, we're at 45 minutes in.
You never shut up.
Do you have any final things? Is there any final questions? No? No? John?
Back to one or two things, taxes.
Sure.
Gas tax, we pay tax on gas. That goes to the state. How much of that do we get back? All of it or a portion?
It depends, but usually a portion.
That's right, because Indianapolis keeps it for themselves.
It's certainly, John, not a dollar for dollar back in.
Right. And so, like, it doesn't happen that way. We wish it would, but it doesn't.
Now, you want people to live here.
Yes, I want people to live here.
Look around the 30-mile radius. Vincennes is always up here on gas. And everywhere else is 10 cents to 20 cents to 45 cents a gallon cheaper. I shouldn't say I'm going to get slammed. They're greedy. Real estate is higher here than anywhere else around.
Supply and demand on that, but the gas, I have no explanation.
There was a house sold just pretty close to us the other day, and I know what the asking price was, well above what they give. The person that bought it come in and offered them an excess money above what they was asking. Within 24 hours, that house was sold. I know that there's a demand for housing. Now, one thing you need to put in that statement you're saying, affordable housing. You know, there's a lot of young kids that would buy here maybe, but you can't start out on a $200,000 home, $175,000. They need to be some, and these builders can build homes range from 85 to 115,000. I know for a fact. Because I know, I worked construction for 42 years. I know a little bit what goes into houses.
On the gas prices, I don't have a dog in this fight, but I do a lot of traveling. And 2 weeks ago, I was shocked that Vincennes was lower in gas prices than Washington, Odin, Ability. So
They're not right
it's
now.
always.
Doesn't have very.
The word always isn't the sometimes it is.
It's also on 99 cents in Terre Haute the other day too. Was you there?
So, John, you know, the affordable housing is certainly part of it. And that's one of those things that I know myself and another RDC member have looked at considerably about how do we encourage somebody to build another Four Lakes-ish type division. Something with a smaller 1,100, 1,200 square foot homes, 1,400 square foot homes that are literally starter homes. But even the Four Lakes area sell right like this.
Oh, yeah.
Go up. And I think that's essential to pair to the workforce that we have at Gyptron, at Farbest, at FIA, those type of houses. Now, you've been in construction, so there's not a lot of profitability in those houses. Maybe there is, but it's not if they build a $400,000 house, they make a lot more money than if they build a $120,000 house. So we've got to figure out a way at the city level. Maybe it is us purchasing the land and selling it for $1 to the best plan out there, maybe to multiple contractors. I think that's probably where I would go. I don't know if that's the best way to do it, but that's probably where I'd go to try to spur it along. But that is my kick.
In 1973, I built 25 houses in a subdivision. Average cost was $18,000. My boss says you need to buy a house. I said, I don't need to buy a house. I've kicked myself 5,000 times for not buying one. For today, if you sell that house, it runs for about 165 grand. Just a hair bit of profit.
Well, and that's another thing too, where I'm not a construction expert. Mark, you're not a construction expert. I mean, the best thing I do to improve my house is watch a YouTube tutorial and then try to fix it, and then I usually end up breaking it.
I can attest to
And there's people in the audience that can attest to this ability that I have. So the thing is, we need to be able to start talking with these people and ask, what do we need to do to make Vincennes better for builders, for construction workers? What areas should we start looking at? What do we need to do infrastructure-wise to be able to entice these things to happen?
And I think it's a partnership with the USB too, in creating taps that would be easily accessible, maybe even free. If they know they got a long-term customer, what's a $600 tap if they're going to have a customer for the next 50 years? You know, I mean that's just good business.
But those are questions that we're not asking right now. I mean, last night would be a great example. I mean, we're just kind of just sitting there, and then
Tim, it's an election year. People are not going to do anything.
And you're just
Let's just be honest.
You're kind of sitting there, and there's no
Best way to
questions
avoid
being
controversy
asked.
is to not do
I mean, we need to have these open discussions. I mean, why aren't we bringing in construction workers? Why aren't we bringing in developers to talk about these things that can have that insight that we don't have? I mean, my insight's in education. I mean, I could talk about education stuff all day, and I'm going to give you kind of an expert opinion there. Mark's going to be able to talk about banking. Kathy's got numerous things.
Banking, finance, assessing,
small business development.
taxes.
15 years at the Chamber of Small Business
Yeah,
Development
so
too. I think we can do that a little bit.
we don't have that background that we need to, and we need to bring people in that have that background, that have that experience, that can answer those questions, and we're not doing that. And that needs to be done.
working part-time at the VTB. In the last 3 or 4 months, we've had 3 people come in. 2 of them from Illinois, because Illinois went down the tubes, but are looking to retire. And they're coming in looking at Vincennes. They're here for 2 to 3 days looking Vincennes over. You know where I send them? Around town. I said, it's a good city. The people are friendly here. They really are. So we try to encourage them to look at different things, what we have. You know, and it's been really funny because in all the years I've been out there, this year we've had, like I said, 3 or 4 couples coming in wanting to retire here.
John, I think an aggressive recruiting policy, not for just businesses, but citizens of Illinois to Vincennes is needed. I mean, their taxes are expensive. They're through the roof.
Yeah, they're
right
moving.
now, we put up billboards on 50 over there saying you need to live here in Vincennes, but we got to have a house for them to live in.
Yeah.
So I think we can gain some population.
Oh, I think you can
some
gain
good
quite a
people.
few people from across the river.
Main Street's been helped a little bit by some people from Illinois coming back over.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, like, I think when Mark was in the chamber, we even had this discussion about, hey,
Let's
how do we
Let's start
recruit
recruiting.
these areas, and how do we set this up? And I was coming at a school perspective, he's coming at a business perspective. How do we bring workers in? And it always ended with, man, we got these great ideas, and we've got so many people coming over here, and now then it stops because we don't have.
A lot of the people at the hospital, VU, live in Illinois. They may be wanting to live over here now.
That's true.
Yeah.
Their property
But-
taxes are through the roof.
We need to find somewhere you could build a subdivision,
Yeah.
put in new houses.
Yeah.
Pierhouse Boulevard.
Love Boulevard.
So we've got about 10 minutes. We're going to wrap this up. Kathy, you got anything you want to close
Yeah,
with?
if they don't want
No, I'm
$25,000,
just
they?
thankful so much you guys brought me here. Thankful for you guys coming out today. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me at my Facebook page. You can call me direct. I'm at the courthouse moving boxes most days. You can come see me up there in my casual clothes. I'd appreciate a break from moving boxes. So I'd appreciate talking to anybody that wants to know anything. I've got information. Anything you want to know, I'll be happy to share it.
So, and I'll let Tim finish, but you can contact me. You can call my cell phone, 812-890-1442. I don't dial myself a lot. 812-890-1442. You can contact me. And I'm going to end exactly how I ended last time. League of Women Voters. I want to debate. Go ask the other group. Let's bring them out and let's try to debate this and let's have some conversation in front of everybody else.
Fantastic. I was hoping that you were going to end it that
I'm
way.
going to end it that way every time until it happens.
Hey, if you see us out and about, stop us, talk with us, email us, text us. Feel free to contact us anyway. Obviously, I'm on Salters for City on my Facebook page. My phone number is there, but you can have it here, 812-890-0094. Just get a hold of us. Let us know what's going on. Let us know what you like. Let us know what you don't like. Any ideas that you have, thoughts that you have, feel free to share them with us. Because we want to hear them, because your perspective matters and is important and allows us to make better decisions as we move forward.
If you want to sign a political sign, one that says like Salters for City, Mark McNeese for City Council, Kathy's going to have some signs ready for you soon. Get in contact with us. We'll get them to your yard. That's all I got.
I do want to end on this. If you go to Councilman Grove's Facebook page, he has a picture of his dog in his shirt, and he thinks it's super cute. We've got a pet contest that we're trying to go over, and we want you to post pictures of your pets on our pages so you can put them in their gear, buy our signs, because he thinks his pet is the cutest.
Are you saying she's not cute?
I'm not saying she's not cute, but I know
He took offense to that.
I know that there is a cuter, smaller,
Oh my gosh.
Chihuahua ear
I don't think
dog
so.
out
Do they
there.
make shirts that size?
Well, I'm working very hard on it.
See, that's
So
wrong.
make sure to go to Councilman Grove's page or my page. Post pictures of your pets by our
I don't have a
sides.
picture of my dog yet, but now.
Now it's going to be there.
Now it's on.
Michelle's got one there, and it looks great. Like she had her dog in it today. So I know it's kind of weird, but Councilman Grove and I are kind of having fun with this, so we're going to keep going with it. Mark, you want to tell them where our next community conversation,
No,
how that's
you
going to be at? Well, we're going to do this one completely different. This
Oh, this one's a good
this one's a fun one. We're really excited about this one. So in September, this is going to be all online. And what we're going to do is we're going to answer the best questions that you send to us and that we've heard since we've started this campaign. And I'm really excited about this one. We're going to do it in front of City Hall. So it's going to be even better. Obviously, we'll be outside because we can't go inside, but we'll be outside City Hall answering your questions. I even have a special moderator. My special moderator is right there. Councilman Grove will be asking us the questions. We'll be answering them for you. I'm really excited about this one.
I really, here, it's interesting. I really want you to ask questions that maybe even make us uncomfortable. Maybe make us think differently than we did before we started the process.
And you can even ask us silly questions like, Mark, what's your favorite color?
Green.
What's your favorite dog? What's Marley?
Golden Doodle, but I got a lot of dogs I like, man.
No, I mean, just simple. I mean, they can be silly questions. They can be fun questions. They can be serious questions. They can be ones that maybe you haven't heard answered before. We want every single question. We'll put a post up where we have the event, and you can put that in the discussion. We'll keep telling you. We'll have some kind of quirky video that I'll put together, reminding you to ask us questions because we're really excited about this one because this is your time to ask whatever question you want about the city or of us or of anything. So that'll be in September.
We'll see you then. Thanks, guys.
No idea.
Dennis, you got it done?
I have no idea.